Since I was a kid, it seemed I collected
Ninja Q.
Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the Ninja Tune podcast. My name's Dexter, I'll be your host, and this time I'm delighted to be joined by Strictly Kev from DJ Food, who's going to be having a chat to me about his new album, The Search Engine. We're going to be hearing tracks from the album too, and we're also going to be listening to some of his influences. As usual, we'll follow that with some new music coming out of the Ninja Tune stable, so please stay tuned for that too.
Like watching falling stars. In the galaxy you've never been. Strange. In space. Curving away at the speed of light.
Welcome to another episode of the Ninja Tune podcast. I'm lucky enough to have gone on an excursion at this time, and I'm down in East Dulwich and I'm here to talk to Strictly Kev, DJ Food, about his new record.
Hello.
Thanks very much for having me.
My pleasure.
It's been 11 years since the last DJ Food album. Did you always know that there was going to be another one?
Yeah, no, there was always going to be another one. It was just getting round to it because various things got in the way, like having a family, moving house, designing full-time for Ninja, as in the graphic side of things, DJing around the world, mixed CDs with DK and PC, the Solid Steel Club that we used to do, a million other things. And you can only fit so many things into every hour of the day, and something had to give, and the music gave. And then it became increasingly harder to kind of get myself into the position to do it. But then around end of 2008 I was ready. DK and I also got into video and the AV scene in 2008, and spent most of that year basically learning how to VJ and add video to our DJ sets. And that came to a head at the end of September 2008, and then it was, preparing for a start in 2009 basically. So it's actually taken about 18 months to make the album. The whole of 2009 and the first 6 months of 2011. 2010 kind of went to the dogs because of the Ninja Tune XX, the 20th anniversary book, box set, world tour, etc, etc. And there was just no way it was going to be finished then. And probably just as well because it would have got lost in amongst everything.
This album, it seems to have quite a different sound from that went before. And would you say it's a record that you've always wanted to make personally? Yeah, is it maybe a bit more of a Strictly Kev album than what's gone before?
It is, because it's technically my first solo record in some ways. It's the album I always wanted to make the album I was always going to make. It's probably changed a little from maybe if I'd have made it 5 years ago, but not that much. There's a lot still going back to Kaleidoscope. There's collaborations with people on it that I've had in place for well over 5 years, if not longer. There's still collaborations that I haven't called in that will be on the next record as well, that have been in the works for a long time. It's come out exactly as I wanted it. It's actually come out better than I anticipated, and the only thing I could say that wouldn't have been on it if I'd have made it 5 years ago would possibly be the Second Class Citizen collaboration, because I wasn't aware of him 5 years ago, but all the other vocalists and people like that, they were always on the list. I made a big list around 2001, 2002 of who I wanted to collaborate with, to have remix it, to mix it, to do artwork with, things I wanted to do with formats and packaging and all that sort of stuff. And whilst I didn't do a lot of those, or some people kind of got struck off the list, I still did a fair few.
Well, one of the people that did remain on your list is, I'm not sure, you'll probably know better than me if this is a pop music first, somebody covering their own record with a different band.
Yeah, that is a bit of a weird one. I did note that when it kind of came into being. Matt Johnson from The. I always wanted to work with him. I'm sure people must have covered their own records with some other band. I mean, surely Bowie's done it, or someone like that, or Jagger, or someone like that. But yeah, certainly Matt Johnson's, I don't think ever covered. No, actually, he has covered himself with J.G. Thirlwell, who's one of the other collaborators on my album, for a very obscure Meltdown Festival performance many years ago, before I actually knew him probably.
How did that come to happen? Was that purely, your fantasy list being written in 2001?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, no, way before 2001, because I'd been a fan of his and Thother's music since the late 80s, and I think I met him in 2003. I can't remember exactly how and why, but we got in contact and I wanted to do something with him, and he was cool with that, and we met to talk it over, and we were going to do a spoken word project based around an E.B. White story, the writer who wrote Charlotte's Web, but he actually wrote a lot of other short stories. That never happened because of legal copyright reasons. Anyway, he was going to do a spoken word thing, I was going to do the music, and then that got put to the side, and then he has this project called The Others, which is covers of the by other bands compilation that he's been putting together for years. He said, did I want to contribute to that? Yeah, great. What do you want to do? Giant, fabulous, let's do it. Who's going to sing it? So, and I said, well, I want to do a track with you. You want me to do this? Why don't we, why don't you sing your own song? It'll be easy. You know all the words. It's like, and then again, he worked slower than I did. That took actually took 4 years it was the first track I started, and I didn't work on it for 4 years, obviously, but it's probably the first thing I did for the album, and it was one of the last things to be finished and the last vocal to come in, and I could not be happier with it. I'm sure I'm going to be crucified by some of the other fans, but I'm a The fan too. So
and the vocal take is unbelievable.
Yeah, well, he was 22 when he sang it first in 1983, and he's 50 now. So he's gonna have improved somewhat, hopefully.
Yeah.
And he sang all the backing vocals as well, which sound female, but they're actually him in high register. And it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
There'll be these pockets of light springing up in different parts of the world. That these will be invisible planets on this planet. And that as we or the world grow colder, we can take invisible space journeys to these different planets, refuel, and come back. We're talking about an underground. And the purpose of this underground is to find out how to preserve the light, life, the culture, how to keep things living. You see, I keep thinking that what we need is a new language.
This is a
So when you're putting a song together, do you know, there are samples throughout the album, and do you collect them or collate them? How do you go about it? And I noticed quite a few of them start with, you know, spoken word bits at the start of the song. Is that the starting point? Do you begin with that and build a song from there, or do you have the music and find a way to introduce it?
They're always different. Sometimes I'll have a title of a track from a sample. Colours Beyond Colours, for instance, starts off with the sample. And when I looked at the mountain far away, I could see Colours Beyond Colours. And that informed the title, and I knew that I wanted to do something very beautiful, very lush, and very sort of calming, because the sample was almost guru-like. I'm not even sure exactly where it comes from. So in that way, I had, it's a very simple track, and I found some strings from somewhere, and I just, you know, they went together so beautifully with several other elements as well. But then sometimes there'll just be a drum sample that I'll definitely want to use on something, and I'll build a song around the drum. A few times I'll put a lot of things together and they just won't work, and half of the art of it is actually collaging samples without the joins showing.
Several of the songs that seem to have visual themes. The samples within them seem to have visual themes. Is that a nod to the other side of what you do?
It's not consciously a nod, it's to do with, some of it harks back to kaleidoscope, colours in sound, colours in music, colours in general. Obviously I'm graphically trained and that's part of my everyday to-day thing, so I'm interested in that. But more often than not, I'd like samples that sort of turn things on their heads. There's a sample that says, have you ever heard the sun? And there's a few of them like that. Yeah, I began to feel the music with my body, with my pores. And I just like those images. It's very, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but it's kind of trippy. And I like music that takes you out of the everyday. I like music that gives you a different experience, you know, that when you listen to it on your own or in headphones, which is very much how this record's made, really, is it takes you somewhere else. And for me, you know, the phrase keeping it real in hip hop is just, it just makes me despair, really, because I don't want to keep it real. The everyday reality is dull and depressing and all the rest of it, and music for me takes me out of that and it takes me away to somewhere else, and that's the kind of music I kind of like to make.
I mentioned earlier that this is probably your most Strictly Kev album that you've made so far. Is there a point where Kev ends and DJ Food begins? Do you put a DJ Food hat on when you start to make an album?
It's a weird thing. It's in name only, really, isn't it? I mean, because Food when it started was completely different with Matt and John's involvement and PC's involvement, and sometimes I wondered, should I chuck the name away? Should I get rid of it? Should I start fresh? You know. But the thing is, you know, it comes down to, there's 20 years of rep there. It'd be crazy to throw that away. Yeah. And artists change in 20 years. What artist doesn't change? The artist that doesn't change in 20 years is a boring artist, in my opinion. But I suppose I just make the music I make. You know, whether it's under DJ, I know it's going to be under the DJ Food moniker. You could say this is the Strictly Kev DJ Food. Maybe that's how history will see it. I kind of think of it as the Mark III of DJ Food, with the first Mark I being jazz breaks 1 to 5, Mark II being Recipe Disaster and Kaleidoscope, you know, more involved in PC as well, and then the rest of it me, Mark III.
So I can't really interview you without talking about your other sort of creative angles and the work that you have done in the intervening 10, 11 years,
Yeah.
depending on how exactly that works out. So your other strand is as an artist and graphic designer. First of all, I would like to doff my cap to you for creating the Ninja Tune logo.
Indeed, yes.
Which is a definite historical mark.
It is actually, in terms of, we tried to change it so many times, or I've tried to change it for various different things and adapt it, and it doesn't really work. It's so strong as itself. It works just as the eyes. You can see the eyes on black and you still know it's ninja. You can boil it down to the head. You don't even have to have a body and arms and record throwing or anything like that. And it works really simply.
Beyond that particular image that you made, you've created vast amounts of artwork. And obviously you've done massive works on the Ninja Tune XX and all of this. Does the artwork take primacy for you, or is it music, or are the two totally hand in glove?
It's like a scale, basically. Once I get bored of one, it'll swing back and I'll do a bit more of the other. Generally it's dictated by what's got to be done. And certainly for the first 5 years of the last decade, there was so much artwork to do in Ninja, and that's certainly throughout the 90s as well. I could just spend all day doing that.
Is designing purely for yourself a different matter? The visual aspect of this particular album and the title, I guess. And how did you come up with all of that? And is it a different thing inherently to do it for your own thing?
Very difficult to design your own record. Possibly the hardest project, because it's literally a blank canvas. There's no brief except your own. And what do you look like? What do you want to look like? What do you want the public? How do you want them to perceive you? Incredibly difficult. I've been a fan of Henry Flint for many, many years through his work on 2000 AD, and I was lucky enough to buy a fair amount of his original art. A few years ago, and directly from him, and he included a lot of postcards from a little exhibition he was having with his doodles. And I mailed him back and said, Henry, what are these crazy drawings? Are these immensely detailed psychedelic drawings that are on these postcards? And he said, these are amazing. This is exactly the sort of thing I'm thinking of for my cover. Because I wanted something quite psychedelic, very detailed, very sort of trippy almost. But he said, that's just stuff I do while I'm watching TV. I said, do you think maybe you could send me some, and I'll colour them up and I can pay you and you can use them for the cover. He said, yeah, great. He sent me a CD of like 50 different ones to pick from, crazy, no way I could use them all. And I was lucky enough to be able to cherry pick them, and they're actually instantly just coming out as a book next month, finally. They were all black and white, so I had to colour them, and I thought, this is perfect, It's all ready-made stuff here. I don't even have to commission him, and I can colour it and put my own spin on it, and then put it all into some sort of form. And I knew I wanted something very comic-y, something very retro sci-fi, very 60s, 70s sci-fi, not Star Wars, before Star Wars. French artist Mobius, lots of the sort of dark sci-fi stuff like Westworld, Dark Star, that Silent Running, Logan's Run, that sort of stuff, before it all went a little bit CGI and lots of, it's almost fantasy sci-fi, anyway. And that was it just worked out beyond the dream. So by the time we got to the album, because I did 3 EPs over the last couple of years, I had this very, very direct sort of image of this space guy floating in space, and said to Henry, right, this time I'm going to commission you and you do this guy. And he just completely knocked it out of the park. It was just amazing when it came in through the inbox. I was just like, that is just so spot on. It's ridiculous, I just wanted him to draw a guy in a spacesuit hanging in space with a backpack that was so unfeasibly large there's no way you could wear it without being in zero gravity, basically, and a load of pipes and stuff, hanging down. And he just did it and it was great. He's an amazingly versatile artist and very humble as well. So that was the genesis of that idea, and I love it. I look at the cover and I just can't believe it sometimes. I just go, oh, wow.
It really fits in well with the atmosphere of the album as well.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. It really does. Like, particularly like the opening of the album, it's got the really deep American voice, which I must admit I was kind of hoping I'd arrive and you to sound like.
That's Ken Nordine.
It'd make a really good podcast.
Yeah. You need to ring Ken Nordine up for that.
But yeah, I think it really chimes with the musical image, because it's quite retro future in a way. I think like there's that old view of space, and the album's quite spacious. And as I say, there are kind of quite disquieting and chilling parts of the record, and like that old sci-fi, that isolation and kind of fear of being in space.
Exactly. Well, the opening line on the album is like watching falling stars in a galaxy you've never been, and said with Ken Nordine's baritone, it's just amazing. Yeah, that was very conscious opener. That track kind of comes in and grabs you by the balls and drags you into the record. So I mean the cover was done very independently of the music almost. I wasn't making the music to fit the cover or vice versa. It's just my interests converge. Space sounds, space visuals. So I've always been into sci-fi since I was a kid. I've always read comics since I was a kid, like robots, all that sort of stuff. Anyone that knows me will tell you, oh yeah, Kev, he likes robots. And it's just one of those things. Well, who am I? What do I look like? What do I want people to see when they see my record? And that's what you see. It's part of me. Obviously, it's a very stylized, fictionalized part. The title changed. It was called Stolen Moments for many years, as far back as 2004, actually. The search engine popped up around the middle of this year, and it's got that slightly sci-fi connection. But half of my thing is about searching and looking for things. I do it all day, consciously or not. I'm looking for information, I'm looking for records, I'm looking for comics or any sort of visuals, inspiration, either in my work, to sample or to use in my graphics. And we use a search engine every day, all of us. It was almost weird when I Googled who's used this. I don't think anyone had used it yet. Crazy. Which is quite great.
See, I think it's quite possible. But this is the beginning of the rest of the future now. But from now on, there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing. And that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet.
I just have to tell you, this is sheer fiction.
Robots?
I feel like this is the beginning. We're beginning of a revolution, solution.
Listening to it, it's quite bandy. Do you know what you're going to do with it live?
As in, sounds like it's made by a band.
Yes.
Yes, that was my intention. In that I kind of build up these virtual orchestras, or not orchestras, virtual bands, basically, with the samples. And I think, I'm going to have 2 drummers on this and a couple of bassists and whatnot. And I'm kind of surprised at how standardised it is sometimes. I think, I haven't got any organ here. I'll put some organ in. I need an organist. And I've got no idea how I'm going to do it live, actually. I'm certainly not going to go down the live route. That is a world of pain and poorness that I don't want to enter. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do the DJ thing. I'm going to do the visual thing. Presumably by the time this podcast comes out, we will have announced the launch party at the planetarium in Greenwich, where I was at today, and I had a private view of the 360-degree dome with my graphics wrapped around it, which was quite mind-blowing. That is going to be a very, very specific event, and that is my ideal thing, is having people sit down and having their minds gently blown by visuals. as you recline your head back. But my DJ set's very different to my records, and I kind of want to reposition where I am as a DJ a little bit and get into playing different kinds of venues, and not necessarily sit down venues, but I don't want to do too much of the club thing. I don't mind it every now and again, but you know, I want to kind of present food from now on. I haven't done the artist places back catalogue kind of set before, and I want to do a bit of that. I want to present a bit of food from back then, which some people are going to be expecting, and a bit of food from now, and a bit of food from in the middle as well. You know, Mark 1, 2 and 3 put all together, which is what I'm in the process of doing right now, is sort of formulating a DJ set based around that, and there'll also be a video component to go with that. Again, tying in parts of the current album with lots of collagey cut and paste. It's very difficult now because a lot of people are in the visual sphere, and I'm very glad that I kind of jumped on board the bandwagon as far back as 2008, because I can do that. I can cobble together a video for a track very quickly from other sources now. I don't have to kind of think about it. I can edit in Final Cut Pro and things, but you know, the whole visual game now with performing has gone through the roof. You know, with people like Hamon and DJ Shadow and Richie Horting, all that, you know, video mapping stuff. It's completely crazed. But then you've got the other side of things like Kid Koala the other night, where he had the whole audience sitting down with headphones on, and he was playing his Rhodes and his turntable with a few screens and some balloons. You know, and I like that. You know, I like that difference. Finders keepers.
Have you ever been completely out of this world?
It's great to build something. You feel it's part of it. You take care of it. Be proud of it.
Might as well move on to talk about your influence tracks. So the first choice that you've put forward for this is Adam and the Ants, Xerox.
Yes, some of my choices are going to mirror Luke Vibert's here from the podcast he did, actually. Xerox by Adam and the Ants was the first 7-inch I ever bought as a child. I didn't actually have a record player until I was 14, because my dad was a tape man, cassette man, and wouldn't have records in the house. And you know, by the time I was 14, I was a bit money, and I actually bought records before I had a turntable. And the first one I did buy was Xerox Machine by Adam and the Ants on Do It Records. And I was such a massive Adam and the Ants fan in 1981. I mean, there wasn't another pop star to really be into if you were a teenager then. And I wasn't. I was only 10, but that record still to this day gives me goosebumps. It's classic. It's a bit punk, but it's cleverer than punk, you know. And it's just got energy, and I love Adam Ant, you know, for all his faults. You know, great vocalist, intelligent lyricist. Obviously got a very keen eye for his visual image as well. And I love it.
I think we'll hear a bit of that. So this is Xerox Machine by Adam and the Ants.
Lock up your brain, 'cause I'm here again. I'm never bored, I'm still your core. Xerox machine. Xerox machine. Give me a line or a middle eight.
Ant Xerox machine, and we're going to talk a bit now about your second choice, is Kraftwerk.
The Masters. Possibly Numbers, Pocket Calculator and Tour de France is the peak of Kraftwerk for me. The Computer album is flawless from beginning to end, and Numbers is for me the highlight because the beats on it are just ridiculous. Just so ahead of their time, so simple. I've got a big thing about Kraftwerk, and I do some regular mixes called the Kraftwerk Cover Collection, where I bring together covers versions of Kraftwerk, things that heavily sample Kraftwerk, or people who've obviously been so blatantly influenced by them they've copied them on their songs, and it's just an endless stream. You would not believe the sort of breadth of people that have covered. Obviously there's a lot of electro and techno covers, but there are folk covers and country and western covers and acoustic covers and all sorts of things, and they're such easy records to sort of cover. The melodies are simple and direct, and they're just the masters. There's not really much more to say.
No, they're not. It's perfection.
I mean, they haven't done anything of any great interest for many, many years, and the new stuff is very derivative of the old stuff, but up until Computer World, they were flawless.
That was Kraftwerk with Numbers on the Ninja Tune podcast. And your next choice, Brian Eno and David Byrne, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. You can pick which particular bit will portray it best.
Yes, I have no idea what track to do. I mean, that album exists as a whole for me. I rarely listen to one track from the album. If I'm going to listen to it, I'll put the whole thing on. And for me, when I listen to that, I almost, I'm transported to another world. It doesn't have to be an alien world or a place. It's an undiscovered civilization, which is something that they were intending to do, this sort of forged anthropology, they were calling it, I think, at the time. They wanted to sort of make the music of undiscovered tribes and things like that. And it's such a sci-fi record, but it's so weird. It exists in its own little place and time. There are a few things around that time that are like it. Obviously, the Talking Head stuff that Byrne did, that Eno did with Byrne, and some stuff that Material did around that time, Bill Laswell. But there's really nothing that came after it that bettered it. It really is just a phenomenal piece of work. And every track on it is a killer. There's no filler. And then they brought out the expanded version a few years ago with some extra tracks, and they were all great as well. It was just like, God. And you just think of the studio stuff they had then. I think they weren't even really using proper instruments. They were using tape loops, and they had a bass guitar, and a lot of the percussion was made of buckets and dustbins and stuff like that. And obviously it's early sampling. It's a very good example of using flown in spoken word and songs from certain vocals from other records, so it obviously appeals on that. But more than anything else, it's a collage record, and it's the way I make music. And when I listen to it, I can hear all the little bits and pieces put together and the little loops and stuff, and it's just beautiful to me. It's just a very, very big influence on my record.
Let's hear a bit of Eno and Byrne now.
I'll tell you what we'll play Regiment.
Okay, that was Regiment from Brian Eno and David Burns, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. Your next choice is Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm.
Yeah, again, the whole album really, because that record, that single, Slave to the Rhythm, that most people probably knew, grew out of a whole album. They wanted to make a whole, I say they, it's Trevor Horn and his Art of Noise team at St. Thomas on Records, who I'm a massive fan of and collector of. They wanted to make a whole Grace Jones album, but they really only had one song, and they managed to stretch it into a whole album, you know, of re versions. Not remixes really, but they show off the sampler to a ridiculous extent on there. They've got treble funk percussionists playing on there. They've got the best studio musicians. They've got the best production. They've just got, it's just amazing. And her voice, her performance is just brilliant. And it's pure pop. It's intelligent pop though. It's when pop was interesting and took risks. And for me, it's definitely Trevor Horn's peak in terms of production. You know, it's a very complete record. He's at the top of his game there. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's pushing someone like Grace Jones, who is very experimental in her own right, out even further, and twisting and taking her voice and twisting it, and it's just fantastic.
Let's play some of that now. This is Slave to the Rhythm by Grace Jones.
To the rhythm, live to the rhythm, love to the rhythm, slave to the rhythm. Chain gang star never saw the action. Oh, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Never stop the action. Come on, keep it up. Breathe to the rhythm. To the river, word to the river, live to the river, love to the river, you slave to the river,
And the final choice is Boards of Canada with Everything You Do Is a Balloon.
Oh yes, yeah, this is a really good favourite, a big favourite of my wife as well. And I remember getting the first, it was the second actually, Boards of Canada EP, the first one on Scam Records, which was just the blue Boards of Canada EP, High Score I think it's called. And that's the final track, and that is just sublime. I mean, it's just a killer piece of music. That, you know, they've got melodies that are as simple as Kraftwerk, but they're coming from a completely different place, and I like that very old analog feel to everything they do. You know, I don't know what they put their synths and samples and beats through, but it's just fantastic.
Well, let's hear a piece of that beautiful record now. This is Boards of Canada with Everything You Do Is a Balloon. that was the last of Kev's choices. Hopefully that's given you a bit more of a window into his musical background.
I mean, it's impossible to do 5, really. The big 5 is impossible.
Well, I'm going to ask you for a 6th now. If you can choose something brand new that's doing it for you.
Literally last week, the new Old Plug album, Back on Time, Luke Vibert, from 1997, in his Plug guys, the drum and bass guys. Suddenly, this DAT turned up at Ninja of all this stuff that he'd had in his drawer or whatever, for all I've got all these old Plug tunes that never came out. And, 10 tracks, flawless again. Some of them better than the stuff he released in the 90s. And you're just thinking, this stuff sat in a drawer for how long? Like 15 years nearly? It's crazy. The guy is ridiculously talented, and there's a couple of tracks on it which are just ridiculous. I mean, there's one called Mind Bending, and it starts off with this sort of low synth, and it's like 115 BPM in a sort of 6-8 walks time, and then kind of builds up, and all of a sudden explodes into drum and bass seamlessly, and all this acid stuff goes everywhere, and it's just Luke Vibert. A lot of time and respect for Luke. He's got a great fellow sampler mentality.
High time there was a proper spring cleaning in the tune by the sound of things. Who knows what else you can find. I think we should probably hit pause there. So yeah, thanks very much for taking the time to have a chat. And we'll leave Darren to do his magic with that.
It only has to be heard to be absorbed.
Hey everybody, come on, gather round. I want you to know, Mr. Button Pushes in town. I got a new dance, make you wanna jump and shout. So get around, let me show you what it's all about. Hey fellas, can I count on? Can I count on? 1, 2, you know what to do.
And now we're gonna do something everybody likes to do.
Mind-bending chemicals. Mind-bending chemicals.
All right, here we go.
This isn't happening. This is a dream. I'm not here, I'm at home. You heard me? And you're part of it.
Hey, get up, brothers! Don't sit there with your head hanging down. Hey, get up, brothers! I know the ghetto's got you down. But there's something I want to say to you.
All right, here we go.
Mind-bending chemicals. To be absorbed.
This is your wonder drug.
Fucking excellent acid.
To be absorbed. Mind-bending chemicals.
Welcome back to the Ninja Tune podcast. We've just been listening to the new Plug track, Mind Bending, which is from the Back on Time album that Strictly Kev was just talking to us about. And that's out now on Ninja Tune. This brings us on to our regular look at some of the new releases that are coming out of the Ninja Tune family of labels. First up, it's Mercury Music Prize winner Speech to Bell with Studio Backpack Rap. This is the first single from her upcoming album Freedom of Speech, which is coming out on Big Dada Records.
They call it studio rap, they call it studio rap. And working with the laptop, MacBook Pro version of Logi that you seen Pro. Tools, true, Juday's kinda old school. Although we got the kicks that are old school, I can see him as he gaze at the ceiling. He got that sneaky feeling, he's gonna give it to the nation. His biggest inspiration is his own imagination. Cause when it comes to rules, he don't have the patience. So we got the USB keyboard that's fresh. I beg I mind what I said. He pop up with less, he does with finesse. See, I'm in molest, he should be arrested. He's working hard, neck breaking to the beat. Headphones, head down like a lesbian. He's on his what wants, and it's so much fun. He's a new age thespian. Wanna hear me rap? It's what jump up a high. It's all in its back, studio rap, rap, rap. They call it, studio rap, rap, rap. They call it, studio rap, rap. She can hear the beat from the sound of her feet. When she reach up the street, she plug it into it. They call it, studio rap, rap, rap. They call it, studio rap, rap, rap.
That was Studio Backpack Rap from Speech to Bell. Up next, it's a brand new signing. This is Deco Child with his single Pray, out now on Ninja Tune. That was Pray by Deco Child, out now on Ninja Tune. Wiley is coming up next with the single Boom Blast. It's taken from his new album Evolve or Be Extinct, which is out on Big Dada Records and is in the shops now.
Boom blast, raving a dance to the dance stand, ladies playing with my heart like wow. Got a warm heart in my chest, but how? When I flow cold, North Pole, not south. Peace, love in my heart, it's been a while now. Here's 3 words, hold it down. So right now I am gonna hold it down. Down, 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 down. The whole crowd singing aloud when I'm around. The fans know $1, €1, or £1. It's all sound, checking my new garms, all grey like a hound. I live in a small town. Got a place in the city when I roll through, and I wanna roll through now. I give you that feeling, make you wanna rave it out and then touch that ceiling. We got 4 hours to go and no, you're not dreaming. Rave to the party's done, cause that's what we believe in. Yeah, that's what we believe in. Yeah. If we give you the feeling that makes you wanna go and touch the ceiling, then let's get down. Let's get down. If we give you the feeling that makes you wanna go and touch the ceiling, then let's get down. Let's get down.
That was Wiley with Boom Blast on Big Dada. Next we have Emeka, who featured on a previous podcast. This is her next single, 3 Hours, which is coming up on Ninja Tune. Emeka with 3 Hours. Finally, it's another new signing, this time from Brainfeeder Records. This is Lapalux with a track called When You Are Gone from the EP Moments featuring PY.
I keep moments of you, trapped in a film, I remember final events. I remember familiar sense. I remember.
Lapalux with Moments featuring PY on Brainfeeder Records. And I'm afraid that is the end of this episode. All that remains is for me to thank you for downloading it, listening to it, sticking with it. I hope you enjoyed it. DK has been twiddling the knobs on this one as usual, so thanks very much to him for his immense production skill. So yeah, cheers.